we forget how even to tune into those subtler things. We're always looking for something really loud and obvious, but the beauty is sometimes in the smallest and softest moments. And the more that you give time to nature, the more that it begins to reveal back to you. That is the relationship. It's the both ways.
Hello, and welcome to Sacred Herbalism, the full moon segment of the Elder Tree podcast, where we explore how plants and fungi can support us to enter into a sacred relationship with life and the living world. I'm your host, Stephanie Hazel, herbalist, anthropologist, and a deep lover of this wild world. Let's walk into the moonlit forest together, into a world of magic, mysticism, psychedelic teachers, and, of course, the plants themselves. Are you ready? This month I interview Katelyn Jones, a wild crafter who is passionate about making flower essences from native Australian wildflowers. She lives in Koa on the tablelands of far north Queensland and runs a small business making native Australian botanical infused skincare products, Quintessence. She's a teacher of earth embodiment practices that awaken the awareness of how nature is alive within all of us, and also teaches workshops helping people make their own vibrational medicine from flowers. Before we start, I'd love to let you know about the Elder Tree Trove. So we just launched a Patreon account, the Elder Tree Trove, where we're going to be adding heaps of great content from all of our presenters and our interviewees on a regular basis. And it's a really beautiful way for you to support the work that the Elder Tree Project is doing and this podcast, and keep both of them alive and thriving into the future. Katelyn, so lovely to have you here today. And I'd love to hear a story from you about your early experiences of having a connection with plants.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having me on. It's really a pleasure to chat with you this morning. So as a child, I think majority of children, we have this deep connection with life itself. We're connected to these deeper layers and realms from where we have come to where we're going. And as a child, I personally was really drawn to flowers. So I was a passionate flower picker. And I was really feeling into the frequency of the flowers, to revel in the colors that as an offering that I could absorb through my own sight, and the unique geometry, the mathematical equation of the universe, absorbing that, and really just kind of immersing the scent of a flower was really beautiful for me. But I just remember being in such awe of their beauty as a whole, but as an experiential awareness with flowers. And within this curiosity of nature, this exploration of my environment, I was always slowing down to receive the flowers, this marvel of nature's offerings. And nature was like this open book that I could walk through, but not just in the sense of reading, but in like an open communication, an open exploration, and an open creation with nature. And I remember one of my first memories, I was born in Victoria, and my family moved up to Cairns. We drove up in a station wagon and had some family living up here. So we kind of just took it on a wing and went, okay, we're going to go have a tropical, life. And we stayed here for some time until now. I'm still living in this area in far north Queensland. And I would have been about 4 years old. So that's my kind of time that I remember first having memories in my life. And as we arrived, I found these little tiny pink violet, kind of pinky violet little pom-pom flowers. They're tiny flowers. And I remember going, like sitting down on the ground and looking at this flower like, wow, in awe of how beautiful and how small it was and how delicate it looked. So I went down to pick the flower. And as I went to pick the flower, I was like stuck, pricked by a really sharp thorn. And this super shocked me. You know, I was in tears. I was going, oh my God, I can't believe this flower could have done this to me. And really, it was like this, I can't believe something that looked so soft could be so strong. And this really became this memorable lesson. And even now, in reflection on this, of like how this has actually become a huge metaphor for my own experience in life, you know, who I am at my very core. I've had to learn how to embody being sensitive. I've always been an empath, very, you know, sensitive and feeling, you know, but feeling sensitive and being sensitive as a way of being, you know, it's like through my life as the nature that I am. I've had to learn to embody that softness as a path to true inner strength and resilience that I needed to be in the world. And fast forward many years later, it's funny that the first plant that I ever used to make medicine that I harvested myself was sensitive weed. So this is the little flower that I was speaking of, Mimosa pudica. So it's a, you know, it has the sharp thorns, but the beautiful little flowers and the sensitive, you know, leaves that close up when they sense touch. So this plant has really followed me through my life and been a deep reflection for my inner land as well.
Sensitive weed. Well, I have memories of being about 7 or 8 and there being these big patches of sensitive weed in cans at friends' places, and me and my friends, you know, sitting there and stroking them, watching them close up. This incredible teacher of the receptivity and the active responsiveness that plants have to their environment, right? Like, I think we often have this story
Yes.
in Western culture that plants are really passive. They're just stuck where they are. They're just kind of victims of the weather and the, you know, the animals that come and eat their plants and their leaves and their fruit. But actually, plants are so actively engaging with their environment through their chemistry, the chemistry they release, the way they talk to bees and other pollinators, the way they communicate with the you know, with all the mycelium underground and with each other, how they change their chemistry depending on how much they're being eaten, you know, and the sensitive weed. I love that you bring that in. That was a really beautiful experience of how responsive plants are. It's amazing as a little child to stroke your finger down their leaf. The leaves are kind of made of lots of little tiny leaves together, and how they just close up, you know, this plant responding to you.
Yes. As adults, we become really domesticated in our ways of being that we forget how to explore our inner landscape, our inner worlds, and we forget how to explore nature. And both of them are reflection upon each other. If we could remember how to explore the natural world, we could remember how to explore those deeper aspects of ourselves, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was really interesting what you were saying there. I think this relates to this question of being in a exploratory state with ourselves and with the natural world. You were talking before about learning to be sensitive instead of just feeling sensitive, and I think that's a really beautiful distinction. And I'd love just to hear a bit more about how those two things are different for you.
Well, I feel that feeling is, you know, it is essential for a lot of our intuition, and we need to know what we're feeling to navigate our way through life. It's an essential part of our nature, but being isn't something we need to try to figure out or navigate, or it is just a state, and it's a state of purity and deep connection with, you know, the earth and the stars, and, you know, the aliveness within ourselves. It's like absolutely everything is in that place of deep connection when we are able just to be. And we find, for me, really this element of being has been the path to finding those deeper messages in life. And I feel that, you know, feeling has helped me navigate through that, you know, but really it's like we don't actually need the feelings and the emotions as much as we just need to learn how to be in the world.
Interesting. I think what's come up for me when you're talking about that difference between feeling and being sensitive, you said there about the emotions, you know, so we often feel really sensitive, and that's where our emotional self is really impacted by the actions of others and our circumstances that we're in. And so we have a lot of emotions, and a lot of people who are drawn towards healing or towards sacred herbalism. So imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast would have a lot of feelings and feel sensitive, feel easily impacted. But I think when you were saying earlier about practicing being sensitive as a way of being, I think that's really connected to this receptivity. So when we're children, we are being
Absolutely.
sensitive, we're being curious and open, and we are able to receive information from our environment and from plants and more easily, and it's less filtered through our mind. We're not just experiencing what we expect to experience, or um, seeing what we expect to see. We're actually being open and receptive. And I think this capacity to be sensitive, to practice sensitivity, is so important when we're trying to create relationships with plants and to have that experience of being more deeply entangled with the natural world around us.
Absolutely, yeah. That process of being sensitive in with the observation of everything that is occurring, and
Mm.
which is really a journey of noticing. It's connection. It's harnessing awareness to get closer to this, real and raw experience of earth embodiment, and coming from a place of this, that, like we were saying, the exploration, the undomesticated nature. I do find that getting stuck in feeling, or stuck in kind of feeling and healing and all of that, can imprison us in some sort of way, I suppose, rather than becoming limitless and
Mm.
finding our true expression.
The difference between feeling and sensing. And I think that's something that is, we aren't supported really to develop that distinction between feeling and sensing. And I know, when I teach plant connection work and plant relationship work, there's a big question that I've also had in my journey, which is like, how much of this am I making up? How much is my own inner world of feeling, and how much is an active dialogue that I'm accessing through sensing? And that's a really important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that you work with flowers, and you were talking about how flowers were so magnetic for you as a child, and that you felt really drawn to them. And I think you're right that this is something that, most children are inherently drawn to the beauty of nature. Most humans are. It's part of the gifts of being alive on this earth. And you've gone on to work very deeply with flowers. Would you tell us a bit about your work with flowers?
Yeah, I discovered flower essences a few years ago now, and I flower essences have been in my life since childhood. My mum was always interested in, the kind of esoteric nature and spirituality, and we, as children, my brother and I learnt Reiki, and I had a very through this kind of influence and osmosis. Really, I was very, very open to spirituality, and I finding flowers as a way to heal these deeper layers was really inspiring for me, because it was on the subtler aspects of healing. And then, fast forward in later on in life, I decided, oh, I really want to make my own. So I started collecting the flowers. I work with natives. So I really have a deep affinity towards the natives and towards wild nature. So I use wildflowers for my flower essences. I feel like their imprint, or their information, their molecular structure, and the frequency that they actually hold is so strong, and even different to the cultivated. I haven't never made a flower essence from a cultivated plant, but maybe one day I will, and I can kind of feel out how it's different. But just when I'm sitting with a flower, wildflower, I really feel like there's a strong frequency that they have to offer, because they don't need us for survival. It's like we need this earth for survival. So for me, they feel a lot stronger in their medicine. And maybe that's just the journey that I'm personally on.
And so you were talking to me previously about how your practice of making flower essences has supported you to come into a deeper relationship with the specific place in which you live.
Yeah, absolutely. This, relationship to land that comes up so much, that I hear, particularly with your offerings, that I love about your offerings so much, and in the reflection to how I see it as well. And I feel like this exploration of the natural world in my environment, I found a sense of stewardship in a way through that exploration with what's happening and working with the flowers and the herbs in my bioregion. I don't have to go more than a kilometer, and everything that I work with is right here. It's really powerful. Once I unlocked that, and I feel like I really landed at home on this particular land. I've always lived in more like coastal areas or thick rainforest, and I never felt like I belonged in those places. And finally coming here, it's more dry country, but it's not too dry. It's like the perfect climate, and I feel so embodied here, And yeah, through this sense of stewardship, I began like a beneficial relationship with the land here.
When you go out harvesting the wildflowers, I imagine that process of walking the land and searching, looking for the flowers that are calling to you and paying attention in that way, right? Because when you're harvesting medicine, wild harvesting, you need to pay attention in a very focused and receptive way. That act must be really profound in supporting your sense of awareness of what's happening in the land and then connection to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it is a slowing down. And for me, once I felt truly safe, also through that sense of safety, then I could slow down enough to pay attention, and to find this silence that can follow the slowing. And through that silence, I was able to observe what was occurring around me, to attune to the subtler aspects of nature, which is so much of it is the subtler aspects, particularly because we're so heavily distracted. We forget how even to tune into those subtler things. We're always looking for something really loud and obvious, but the beauty is sometimes in the smallest and softest moments. And the more that you give time to nature, the more that it begins to reveal back to you. That is the relationship. It's the both ways. And to me, those so sacred dimensions of life really are this unseen connections in these subtler realms. Through the process of softening, I was able to receive some really powerful encounters, and some of them was just super simple encounters. But either way, I felt like a lot of them became almost like messengers, or they were every flower that I've ever worked with has offered me a sense of almost reflection in a way. So to help me understand deeper aspects of myself, so reflecting potentially what I actually needed for healing at that time, or even like going back to the start, or like sensitive weed, it was reflecting actually my true nature back to me. And only by slowing and attuning can we sense into to understanding what that deeper reflection is,
There's a lot in there I'd love to deepen into there. I think just to go back to your comment where you were saying that when we give time to nature, then nature gives back to us, and that sense of a reciprocal relationship. And I think that's a really powerful way of looking at it, because we talk a lot about reciprocal relationships, mutuality with plants, but it can be very confusing to know what is it that we have that nature might desire, right? Like especially wild plants, they don't need us to water them or fertilize them. In your own garden, that's a bit easier for us. We're like, here, plant, let me keep you alive. When we're talking about wild plants, they're so resilient, they've got it all. And you hit on something really beautiful there when you were saying that the more time we give to nature, the more they give back to us, because time and attention is something that humans we have and is precious to us. Our time and our attention are very limited. We have quite short lives. A tree can live for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So giving this gift of our precious attention that we are giving away all the time in a really unconscious way to social media and all kinds of distractions, our phones, but giving our attention, because every relationship needs quality time. It's like the foundational aspect of a relationship. You and I can have this nice connection on this interview, but if we actually want to move from just like, oh, cool, I know who you are, to having a relationship, we would need to spend time together. We'd need to listen to each other and pay attention. For you to feel seen and heard by me, and me to feel seen and heard by you, is how we would actually start to create a relationship. And the same holds true with the natural world. So I want to just really underscore that point that you've made really beautifully. The thing that we have that nature loves and thrives on is really deep, sensitive, slow attention and time. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'd love to know a bit more, I guess, just practical detail about what that process looks like for you when you're going out harvesting herbs, and you're talking about softening and slowing and being receptive. Can you just give us some tips about what you're doing on a practical level there?
Yeah, before I go out, particularly if it's with making a flower essence, it becomes, before I even make it to the flower, the journey begins. So it's this, sometimes I'll put even a call out to the flower before I get to it. So if there's anything that I need to know about its medicine before I physically get there to show me. So I've already began this sort of sensing and connecting, or an intention ultimately, to let the flower's wisdom, let the plant's wisdom move through me, so that if it really wants to speak, then I can be a conduit to that expression. I feel like a lot of plants are screaming out at the moment to be like, pick me, I have so much to give. So I give them that chance. If some of the flowers are really subtle, and it's not a huge sort of experience, but other flowers are really loud. And so I tune before I get there, and it's kind of clearing my energy, and I go and stand on the earth, feet on the earth, no shoes, just to connect in with the earth as a living body. So really kind of deepening that respect to what this, without the land, we wouldn't all exist. We're like, the mother is giving life to all of her family. So we're all just part of that one big family. And the earth itself, the land itself, holds the greatest wisdom and knowledge. So I always feel into that. I do a lot of earth connection in my daily life, and working with that. And it's very much a giving and receiving. But yeah, so I always tune into the earth connection, and then as I go on the journey, I pay attention to what's going on, because there's sometimes there can be these really amazing signs and symbols, and then that becomes some of the energy of what the benefit of the flower's healing is. And then when I get to the flower, it's always this consciously taking it. Yeah.
So you start by kind of breathing and connecting with the earth with no shoes on, like ground earthing, I guess that's called. And you, in your heart, send out a call to a flower that you are going to harvest. Do you already know what that flower is, or you're not sure at that point what flower you're harvesting?
It can be both. I have done both, where I went to this really powerful place in, it's called Nukai. It's up in the Cape. So we were on a trip to the Western Cape. My husband does turtle monitoring trips. He does a turtle project over on the western side of Queensland. So we did a beautiful road trip, and we saw some really amazing places. And there was this place called Nukai, and they call it the Healing Waters. So it's a sacred spring. And I was, thinking there's got to be a beautiful native growing somewhere there that wants to work in such a powerful place. So I put the calling out before we got there on the day, and I had no idea if I would find any wildflowers. Australian wildflowers, they're not everywhere, they are, but it depends on, they're very seasonal, and they seem a little sparse, especially as you get into the drier country, and in Queensland anyway. And then I found this beautiful beech tree, that native beech tree that was actually, its roots were in the spring where, you know, indigenous had come for hundreds of thousands of years to go and bathe in these healing waters. So it felt like a really beautiful blessing. And then I got to work with this flower. So, you know, that's an example of me having no idea, but I was getting all of these beautiful messages of healing before I even got to the flower. And then other times I've actually known what flower I'm going to work with and then directly worked with that. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I love that the story of Nukai, that yeah, so a place like that must have plants that are keen to collaborate with humans, you know.
Absolutely. This flower was when I actually sat with it and was receiving the messages. So I write it down. It comes through feeling my actual sort of kinesthetic sensations in my body. It comes through words, just dropped in words in my mind. They can be really random, or they can be really like, you know, like a channeled sentence. Sometimes I'll just experience color through it, which can be interesting because you get the observation of the color of the actual flower, but sometimes it can actually give you another color in your mind.
And how did you know, when you walked out at Nukai and said you were already receiving some communication from the plant and you went out looking for the plant, how did you know when you found the one that you were there to harvest?
It was right at the spring. It was just right there, blooming in full bloom too, because I have a deep respect for plants that if they're not in full bloom, don't take their flowers. If it's not the right season, then respect that. But it was in full bloom, flowers everywhere, and its roots were literally drinking in to the spring. So it felt like, you know, yeah, it was the most perfect tree that I could ever. And there was even a branch coming down. It was quite a large tree, and I didn't have anything to kind of stand on to go up. But there was one branch kind of hanging down at eye height, and there was the beautiful flowers. So it just felt in alignment.
Sometimes I have this experience that you might relate to when I'm walking in nature or bushwalking and I'm looking for a plant to have a chat with, because I like doing that when I'm walking, just find a plant to sit down with and just say hello to and see what they have to say. That sometimes when I find the one that feels right, it kind of looks like it's got a filter on it, almost like a photo filter, like it's a bit brighter and more vibrant and almost slightly shimmery, that there's this sense of profound aliveness to it. Even though everything's alive, it's just a little bit of extra something that means that I can't take my eyes off it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's all right. You want to have a chat with me? Okay. Do you relate to that at all?
Yeah, wow. I feel like that with certain species of plants that I will feel more of an affinity to stare at. Like I go, wow. I don't even notice that I'm doing it because I'm just being, and then I'm witnessing. Then all of a sudden I realize, oh, I've been staring at this tree for 5 minutes, and oh, maybe there's something there. And so a lot of my relationships have happened in that way of just observing. So I do get that kind of the shimmering, or there's something so beautiful about it that you want to be with it and be present with it. So I feel like that with a lot of the native plants. And I've kind of felt a bit of an affinity to some of the primitive plants as well. Like I feel like they hold a lot of wisdom, you know, the
Like the
sheoaks and the cycads, yeah, xantharias. I'm pretty sure that they are primitive as well. I'm assuming the grass trees. Yeah,
Yeah, I love xantharias. They're very they have a real feeling of sentience to them in the landscape.
absolutely.
Do you ever work with weeds, like weed flowers, or do you strictly work with native plants?
I majority work with native plants, other than obviously sensitive weed was my first connection to the plant as a pathway, plants as a pathway. But yeah, I haven't really explored too much of weeds because I have a deep connection to natives. It's almost like I feel like I'm cheating on them or something. Like my best friends, I'm gonna let them know it's okay, you're still my best friend. You know, if I do start working with non-natives. But I would like to explore that more. I'd be open to explore that more. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm curious about what
the weeds are these plants that are so resilient and so determined and are managing to thrive in often land that's really disturbed and really marginal. And I feel like as colonizers, I feel like they have some medicine for us for sure. And often they are the medicinal plants, not all of them though. So I think the ones that are not, strictly medicinal plants on a physiological level, they might be really interesting to work with as flower essences, because as you said, the actual matter of the plant isn't really in the flower essence. So you take out any of the risk of any toxicity they might have. I'm thinking where I am in Yukai in North New South Wales right now, there's a lot of crofton weed in bloom, and of course lantana. Lantana is such a big issue in this area. And yeah, I'd just be really curious to know what those plants had to say. Yeah, because they are resilient, like you say. They're constantly adapting to their environment. Rather than relying on us for survival to feed them, and we'll plant them in the right area, and they have sun and all of those sort of things. They have everything that they need for survival, and yeah, doing all of that on their own. I'd love to know about a particular plant that you have been feeling really connected to lately. I've had a few recently. The one that I'm currently working with, I actually been working with two different flowers at the moment, but one that I've most recently been journeying with is actually Grevillea. And for me, when I attuned to the message of this particular flower, I had this, because Indigenous would use them. They were like this lolly water. They hold a lot of nectar, rich nectar. So they've got beautiful bird life. Their colors are really vibrant. And so you can even hit them on the back of your hand. And I remember doing this as a child, hitting the flower and its nectar dropping, these little droplets on the back of your hand, and then you lick it off, this sweet, beautiful, like honey, like nature's lolly. And it kind of associated me with this memory of being in awe and the exploration of the beauty of nature and the purity of joy that unfolds through that exploration. And the other day, I had this experience as I was driving through town, and this lady was in her car. It's a totally different experience with a flower, but this deep reflection on how this flower can give me so much what I need in at this time. And so she pulled up outside of the local food store, and she was cranking her favorite song, blasting it out of the car with the windows down, singing at the top of her lungs. And then as she got out of the car, she looked across the road and she caught some random person's eye with a beaming smile, and she just said, "Man, it feels good to be me." And just through me, like, witnessing this random stranger's experience, it made me deeply reflect on the last time that I'd felt that kind of aliveness. And I feel like a lot of us we've come from a big place of turmoil and many years in the past. And I do believe it is a collective thing. And that's how I feel like I reflected that a majority of people have felt a similar turmoil from me as me. And through this reflection, I was like, okay, I actually hadn't journeyed with the Grevillea yet. I'd journeyed with all of the medicines that I've made, but I hadn't journeyed with this one. So I was like, okay, it's time for you. You're already telling me that it's time for you. And so I've been journeying with that. And since I have been, these tiny aspects of joy have been unlocking in me, that it feels like my heart is so much softer through being able to be joyous. And I'm waking up with the smile on my face, and I'm going, is this the Grevillea? I love that beautiful kind of, sensing and everything with that. And so, yeah, the Grevillea has been my most recent journey of a flower as a medicine, and something that I felt like I really needed so that I could walk into this next stage of my life from a place of joy, and really to release all of the things that have happened before, and not keep telling myself any stories that will hold me back from the greatness that that is possible for me in my life, and knowing that when I can hold that kind of joy, that the world around me will receive that kind of joy. And that's ultimately, I feel like, what we all need, right?
So for you, the grevillea, you've been taking it every day for a while and just paying attention to what you're feeling in your body and your heart. And it sounds like the grevillea for you has been bringing a lot of sense of joy and aliveness into your daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I feel like flowers themselves, they hold a really high frequency. The flowers can be measured around 300 hertz, whereas the natural frequency of our human standing body is only 7 hertz. So the flowers themselves can raise our vibration with theirs. They offer us this resonant frequency, which are these, I feel like they're like electromagnetic waves, or the imprints in the water. And the body's natural frequency, if it's ever scattered or something's not in harmony, then the flower's vibration can assist in bringing that back into this healthy frequency communication.
Yeah, I mean, flowers in a way, they're the pinnacle of the plant, right? That's like they put so much energy into making these incredibly beautiful, attractive things, these flowers, as ways to interact and communicate with the insects and the animals all around them, and us as well. And I think that's, for me, I love what the focus you're putting on flowers, because the flowers are a really powerful way that plants communicate. They're designed to communicate. They're designed to attract. They're designed to communicate with each other, right? The way that different plants pollinate each other via the insects. It's a very collaborative, interactive part of the plant. Whereas the leaves, which, I probably use leaves mainly for medicine. As a Western herbalist, we use a lot of leaf medicines. But in a way, they're almost more a private thing. That's the plant creating its food and drinking in the sunlight, rather than the flower, which is intended as a shared experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like they're almost like this rainbow voice of nature. They're coded in such rich symbolism, and they're a part of our life. When we're born, someone brings flowers to our mother, and when we die, the flowers get put on our wherever we're laid to decompose. Every flower has these meaningful stories to tell, and really they've been telling these stories and part of the human interaction for thousands of years. And when you're adept in the language of flowers, yeah, you can understand these stories.
And they're just so beautiful. They just bring joy just by their beauty, just by being in a space. I love having a bunch of flowers that I've collected from the garden and put on the table, and I'll just see them and feel happy for every time. Actually, my daughter's first word was flower. Flower.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
I was quite delighted being, a herbalist. Like, yeah, flower.
Yeah, so special. Yeah, they're floral gems, aren't they?
They really are. Yeah. I'd love to hear a bit about your upcoming workshop that you're running on flower essences. Could you share a bit about when that is, and I'll put the links in the show notes for people who might want to learn with you.
Yeah, beautiful. I am running a workshop in Koa, so it's in person on the 17th of September. So it's around a 3 to 4 hour journey in the morning, and we go through plant communication. So we actually sit and commune with the flower. So learning these deeper connection and techniques, really, to open that intuitive communication with the flower as the pinnacle of the plant. And we also do some beautiful meditation, so some walking meditation and sensing into our environment and how the environment is alive within us. And yeah, so we will do that coming up, which is always such a beautiful thing to share. And I'm always floored by how everyone receives the messages, and the common ground of the messages. It's quite beautiful. So that one's on my website.
And what date is that?
On the 17th of September, which I think is a Saturday.
Beautiful. Great. Yeah, sounds like a beautiful journey for people. And I love that you are starting from that place of what are the techniques that we use to open into plant communication. And I think it's something that I like to imagine that in older times, people were being taught that really early as part of the survival requirements, right? When you're really dependent on the land the way that we used to be, then, I mean, we still are, but the direct dependency, we're like alienated from that dependence. Someone else does all that work for us. Then you have to learn how to read your environment, how to attune, how to become sensitive, how to be sensitive. And that's something that I think, having lost that for most of us, when we relearn it, it does create a much deeper feeling of safety, as you mentioned earlier, of being safe in our environment, and real groundedness and belonging to the land, which is something that we all need to feel. And if we don't, our mental health really starts to unravel, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe so as well. This, yeah, connection to land, everything moving through cycles and understanding those cycles within ourselves, and the land being the oldest living thing in the world, ultimately, the land itself, the earth itself, this giant planet spinning around through space. So it
Mm,
holds so much knowledge of everything. It's such a profound thing to understand this deeper interconnection, and to find that universal harmony, to actually acknowledge that the constant interweaving of life, everything as a part of the one whole, the rocks, the rivers, animals, stars, our bodies are all
mm,
connected through, this sense of greater unity. It's really that greater unity to me is this force that it combines everything and it transcends everything. And yeah, it's this
mm,
oneness, and in that place of deeper connection with that oneness of everything that is alive, we have an opportunity to return home in ourselves, so that
mm.
any illusion of separation can dissolve ultimately, to
And
be
then I
held
think from that
by the arms of life.
that place of returning home and being held by the arms of life, as you say so beautifully, when we sit in that place, then it's much easier to engage in right action. And I think that's something that our species really needs to upskill in quickly, taking right action so that we are not creating devastating consequences on all the other beings and ultimately ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, deep respect for the land that grows us. It's like, love your mother, and it
Yeah.
becomes a responsibility as we grow up, in our adult lives. So it's like looking after your mother as you get older, and well, it's a reciprocal, it is a relationship. She looks after you, you look after her. It's a, like, it is this responsibility for us to care for this earth.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that parallel you draw with looking after our own parents, because there is a phase in our lives when we're not children anymore, we're adults, but we're really focused on ourselves. We're very self-centered. That in your 20s, maybe even your 30s, and there comes a time when you have to really grow up into maturity and either have children and look after your elderly parents and look after the land. That's all in this phase of life, which I think we enter into much more, in our 40s and 50s and even beyond that. And that is maturation, being able to see beyond your own desires and needs, and it's not all about you anymore. And that's that shift I think we've spoken about in some other of the podcasts, away from anthropocentrism. In a way, our culture has this idea that humans and our needs are the most important thing. That nature is there just waiting to heal us, or nature is there just for us to cut down the trees to make chairs. And there isn't that sense of, like, well, actually, the living world has needs that are much bigger than just human needs. And as we grow into maturity, we need to be able to also be tending to these more than human needs in the land and the communities around us. I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that we help the earth heal, the more that we heal. We
Mm.
are the earth is us. So we, it is that, connection to earth as a living body and us as the living body of the earth. It's like we need to look within and without, that reflection of nature. I keep coming always back to that. There's a reflection where we are the same, and through that awareness, then we can have a deeper respect, a deeper love for ourselves, and that we'll have a deeper love for the earth too.
Thanks, Katelyn. It was such a pleasure to talk with you today, and I look forward to seeing what unfolds next on your flower essence and earth connection journey.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's just a pleasure to be able to chat with you today.
That's us for this moon cycle. I'm so glad you walked into the dark forest with me. This podcast is part of The Elder Tree, a non-profit dedicated to empowering people through grassroots herbal education, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers and plant folk in Australia. You can head over to theeldertree.org to find out more. If you like this episode, we'd love you to subscribe. And if you know who we should interview next, drop us a line. See you next month, and in the meantime, may you be blessed with good health and many plants.